Well, next up, as you can see, these bikes are pretty small. Suspension designed for a 7-year-old. So, a pretty soft guy like me will make it bottom out. So we're going to throw a stage 1 suspension kit in it, which replaces the lower fork legs, replaces the stock fork bushings, and replaces the stock springs with a heavy-duty spring, as well as a Kitaco rear shock, which is going to tighten this up. Going to give it an overall lift about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. And it's a really nice kit for overall stunning. And we're going to put it in right now. So here's what comes in the kit. We've got the heavy-duty front springs, the Delrin fork bushings, the Kitaco rear shock with adjustable spring, and the chromoly +1 fork legs. So we're going to show you how to put that in right now. Alright, tools you're going to need. We need a 5mm Allen to take off the front fork guards, 14 and a 19mm wrench for the front axle, a pair of 12mm wrenches to get the front brake cable off, snap ring pliers to remove the fork legs, and a 14mm to loosen the top fork leg bolt, 1/8 inch punch to get the fork legs apart, some good waterproof grease, and a hammer. Possibly you might need some channel locks or pliers. Well, we're going to install the shock first. It's real easy. Just 2 bolts hold it in. But it has an adjustable spring here, and it's set from the factory at the loosest setting. And we're going to set it more toward a 170-pound rider. There's a couple different ways to adjust this. The correct way is with the spanner wrench, but for this it requires 2 size spanner wrenches, and I know a lot of you guys out there don't have spanner wrenches at home. So another way to do it is with a pair of channel locks. It's not the cleanest way, but it'll turn it. You can adjust the spring with these. I like to hold the shock in a vise, or you can also use a punch and a hammer to adjust the spring. I'm going to put it in a vise to do the work, so it holds it nice and still for me. Just even rotating the shock will get the lower one to move by rotating the upper spring. You getting that? Mm-hmm. So you just have to have the bottom spanner nut unlocked, and the upper one will turn with it. I can actually do this one by hand since it's brand new. As you can see, I'm getting some progress on the threads here. That's about where I want to be. I'm going to start out there. Now we just need to lock these 2 spanners together, opposite rotation, so they'll lock in one place and not move. Now without the proper tools, that's a little bit difficult, but I'm just going to give it a couple pops in the opposite direction with a punch, so it tightens it together. So there we go. It's locked in. It's not moving anymore. It's adjusted approximately to a 170-pound rider. Once we get it on the bike, we'll really know. Now it's ready to install. We have 2 bolts holding the shock on, with a 14mm head and a 17mm nut. I'm just going to use a couple of open-end ratcheting wrenches and crack these loose. And then to remove the bolt, you got to unload a little bit of the weight off of the shock. So I'm just going to lift up slightly, bolt slides out, and the top bolt slides out, shock comes off. So I just need to feed the new shock in, get it in position, lifting up on the bike. I'm ready to install the bolts. Then the bottom one, you might have to move it around a little bit to get the eyelet lined up. And there it is. Tighten up the bolts. Much stiffer. More travel. Time to get rid of the stalker. Alright, time to take the lower legs off to replace the bushings, the legs, and the upper springs. First, I'm just going to get these fork guards out of the way. Also, the front brake cable needs to be removed from the fork so that you can slide the fork off the bike. Two 12mm nuts to crack the brake cable loose from the brake mount. And the brake cable's off. Next, I'm going to loosen the two 14mm bolts that are actually the top spring retainers. There we go. Now the 14 and 19, I'm just going to remove the front axle. Now, I can just pop off the front wheel. The lifesaver on getting your fork legs out is the snap ring pliers. One of the specialty tools you'll need to get this apart. There is a way to do it with dental picks and pliers and screwdrivers, but the real easy way to do it is with a nice pair of snap ring pliers. The snap ring holds these lower legs in it. So they're ready to come out. Just need to get the boot out of the way. It just pops off. Pull both booties. So I'm just going to remove the snap ring along with the retaining washer. Now the whole leg slides right out of the upper fork assembly. There's your fork bushing, another fork bushing, your spring, and your upper spring retainer. Now it's time to reassemble the stock legs. To do this, I highly recommend an 1/8" punch as well as a standard punch. The standard punch can be replaced with a screwdriver, but the 1/8" punch is critical to get the fork leg apart. So let's get started.
It's going.
Alright, to assemble the lower legs and springs and bushings, I highly recommend that you start with one leg at a time. That way you always have a reference of how everything goes back together. So I'm going to start with the right leg here. And I have my replacement right leg. The orientation also matters. You have to have your fork mounts facing the same direction. So I'm just going to put that aside and take apart the stock fork. First I got to remove a little grease to see what I'm doing. An 1/8" roll pin right here. You getting that?
Yeah.
On the upper fork bushing that holds the spring retainers to the legs, and that's what needs to be removed with the 1/8" punch. So don't push on this bushing. You don't want to pop anything on this bushing because this is the upper fork bushing and you can damage it. So I'm just going to hang it off slightly and tap this punch through. So I got the roll pin coming out. The orientation on this upper spring is also, you need to make a note, the fork guard bolts face outward, and then this alignment lobe on the upper spring retainer faces the inside of the bike. And it has to go the same way. If you put it together 180 degrees off, you're going to be bummed when you try to put it back on the bike. So make a note of that while you're taking it apart. So there's the roll pin. Now I can just remove it, the whole spring retainer from the lower leg. I'm going to keep that aligned just like it was. I'm going to take the upper fork bushing off. It's got a little burr on it from popping it through, so it's kind of sticking. I'm just going to pull it through here and hopefully pop it off. Keep that in the same orientation so everything's lined up. The stock fork bushing, don't need that anymore. And the dust cover, as well as the fork bushing retainer and the snap ring that holds it all together. So I like to keep everything lined up so I know exactly how to put it together, and I also have this as an example right next to it. And we're ready to put together the chromoly fork legs. First thing I'm going to do is apply a little grease to the leg, a waterproof grease. Don't have to get too crazy, just a nice thin layer. And put it back together in the reverse order. First the dust booty. Make sure I still got some grease. I think kind of wiped some of it, so I'm going to have to put a little bit more on. The snap ring, the fork bushing retainer, then the new Delrin fork bushing. And you notice it has a step in the bushing. That's what holds it up in the fork, so that's going to go on with the step down. I'll slide that on. So that's ready to go. Next, I got my upper fork bushing. And then the spring. So now it's ready to go back together. I'm going to hold it all lined up. Make sure I don't support the fork on the fork bushing. I'm hanging it off the edge of the table slightly so that it's actually hitting the fork retainer. And pop this roll pin through. Make sure it's recessed so it doesn't rub the inside of the fork leg. Okay, now I got it recessed about an 1/8 inch. Make sure it's coming out both sides so that the spring is fully seated. Now we have to put the heavy duty spring on. Right at the end of the spring, you got that? See how the spring comes to an end right here? That's what I want to tap and unscrew. And then the spring just comes off. There we go. You also have a bump stop. Make sure that's back on. I'll do the same with the upper retainer. Just going to hold that in my vise and loosen the spring. This spring has a slight burr on it, which is going to make it a little bit rougher to install, so I'm going to go ahead and knock that off with a file just so it spins on easier. On to the lower retainer. Oh yeah, that one's gliding on like butter. And I also have to watch the orientation. I got my fork. My fork's outwards, so the notch has to be facing inward. So I gotta go a little bit to right there. So my orientation's good, my spring is on, and that leg is ready to go. We got all the springs installed, bushings installed. Now before I put it in the upper fork legs back on the bike, I gotta grease this bad boy up. It helps the bushing slide and it keeps your springs from rattling. Hear a little rattling in the front forks, that's from your springs hitting the outer housing on the upper fork legs. So I'm going to get down and dirty, just go for it. Got some waterproof grease here, and I'm just going to lay it on it. Alright, now we're ready to put them back in the bike. Put this thing back together. Got to get down and dirty on the ground here. Hopefully not get too much grease on the bike. The whole leg will just slide right back in, as well as the bushing. Just push the bushing right back up in there, and then make sure it's fully seated past the snap ring groove. Get my snap ring back in. Make sure the orientation is correct. There we go, I felt it lock in. Fork guards are facing out, and the notch up on top of the forks is locked in. So now I'm ready to pop the snap ring in. And just make sure the snap ring's seated. Click. Push the boot back on. Ready to bolt it on then the top.
The reason for that is...
You don't want to do this twice. Let me tell them what happened here. Now that you're all laughs over here. We're so focused on getting the shots that I put the legs in on the wrong side. So when you're putting them in, make sure you have the brake pin on the left side where the brake drum actually goes. I threw it in the wrong side, so now I get more practice. I get to do it again, take it apart and do it again. What can I say? One of these days I'll figure it out. So don't do that. You don't want to waste that time, you want to go riding. Alright, make sure that you put the side that has the brake cable on the left fork leg. It'll save you a little time. Alright, now we're ready to put the front wheel back on. You know, pop the front wheel back on, the axle through, axle nut. Put the front brake cable back on. Just gotta hold the bottom nut with the 12 and then tighten the top nut. Install the brake pin. Return spring. The adjustment knob. Stage 1 suspension kit installed.